All right, everyone, let's go ahead and get started with today's Conversational Interfaces Academy. Thank you all for joining us. As always, please be sure to visit our academy page on our Virtual Agent NLU community forum. There you'll see all our past recordings of our academy. You'll see what's coming up. And of course, our community forum as well has all the information you need. You can go there to look up articles, ask questions, give answers, all of your experts just by virtue of attending this academy. And if you're watching this on YouTube and you like what you're seeing, go ahead and click that like and subscribe button. That way you're notified every time a recording is posted. For example, this session here will be recorded, so feel free to share this invite to all your colleagues, all your friends, family members, your pets maybe. But if not, they can certainly watch it afterwards once it's posted on YouTube. Recording usually comes up later in the week. And today's an exciting topic, at least from what I hear. Every time the word generative AI have become a Pavlovian response in the tech community. And today we're going to talk about using the generative AI controller with the virtual agent. So a brief agenda, and I usually don't have an agenda because it's very simple, but today we're going to do a bit of a breakdown. So that's why I have it up here. We're going to first talk about the generative AI controller overview, what it is, what it does. We're going to do an exercise, how to turn on the generative AI controller, how to activate it, and then how to use it in virtual agent. We'll actually build a conversation with it. Then we'll talk a little bit about roadmap in terms of what's next for Now Assist and virtual agent. For those of you who don't know, Now Assist is the term for ServiceNow's generative AI solutions. And then we'll wrap with Q&A. It's just me today, so apologies ahead of time if I'm a bit delayed in the responses for Q&A. I don't have an assistant today, but we will make it work. All right. So what is the generative AI controller? So the controller allows you to embed generative AI workflows in your ServiceNow platform without any integration complexity. In the past, if you wanted to integrate a large language model in the ServiceNow platform, you'd be calling REST APIs, you'd be doing some scripting, maybe building the flow, you would incur integration hub transactions, and the request response isn't so performant, etc. Well, all of that is gone with the controller. You can do all this now without any integration complexity. You can achieve faster time to value. It's all low code. There's no coding, no scripting, none of that to create value and to accelerate your generative AI development in ServiceNow. So as I mentioned, it's a low code integration. So today when we go over this, there'll be little to no code. And it's a simplified API. And we provide a lot of out-of-box capabilities for you. Capabilities like summarize, like generate content, generic prompt, and more. And we'll go over those in a bit later. And then you can seamlessly incorporate this into design experiences such as Flow Designer, Virtual Agent Designer, which is what we're going to go over today, and scripting if you choose to, but you don't have to. So some general quick tips and FAQs before we get started. First off, the generative AI controller requires a Now Assist SKU. All right, so talk to your account rep or talk to your ServiceNow platform owner if you want to use the controller. But we have some SKUs available. The controller is available and is available in all of them. Once you purchase the SKU, you can download the controller. Okay. The controller is only available for Vancouver patch 2 and above. So you must be on a Vancouver patch 2 instance to use controller. And then moving forward, of course, you'll be able to use it. In order to use controller, you do need an Azure OpenAI or OpenAI subscription. And that subscription has a key. You'll need the API key. I'll show you later on where to put it. And then coming soon in the future, we're going to enable Google Palm. So that's cool. And then just to note, there's no public access to Now LLM. So you may have heard of us having Now LLM, which is our own ServiceNow LLM. Yes, it does also use controller in the background, but it's not for customers' consumption. It's for internal development tools. So just keep that in mind. Josh quickly asks, is there a tentative timeline for November for Google Palm? Yes, there is. Later this month. And I'll have the forward-looking statements safe harbor later on, but yes, it should be tailored for later this month. So let's jump right into it. Let's just jump right into our demo slash exercise. So there's going to be two tables you need to be aware of. Now, I know these are long table names and stuff, so that's why, excuse me, I leave it on here for you to copy paste or to write it down. One is called sys1 extend capability. And that's going to be where you enable or turn on the controller capabilities. And the other is sys1 extend builder config. And that's where you turn on the capabilities for the builders, whether that's in this particular example, virtual agent. So let's jump right in. I'm going to pause, or I'm going to stop my screen share. I'm going to switch to my instance and we'll get right on it. But the first thing we're going to show is the store. This is where once you purchased a Now Assist SKU, and that does entail an additional cost, or as all SKUs do. Once you download the Now Assist SKUs, you can download or install any of these plugins or these store apps, technically plugins, and they'll all have the controller. Once you download and install it, you go to the plugins manager. You go into your plugins manager. You should see amongst your Now Assist store app installed, also the Generative AI controller installed. The controller is dependent on and will include two other apps. One is the OpenAI Spoke for your OpenAI subscription. The other is the Azure OpenAI Spoke for your Azure OpenAI subscription. Okay. The other thing you're going to need is, as I mentioned, a subscription. For example, Microsoft Azure. We're going to use that as an example moving forward. So here, if you go to your Azure portal, there we go, sneak that in there. You probably have an OpenAI, Azure OpenAI resource. And when you open that, you have your information here. You go to keys and endpoint, and you'll have your endpoint and you have your key, right? So you're going to need this later on. So let's go back to the instance and let's start configuring. All right. So once you got all this installed, we're going to go to that table I mentioned, which was sys1 extend capability. Don't worry, you type this in enough, you memorize it like I do. Now, these are all the capabilities that are included for you via the controller. Now, some of these, your mileage may vary. They may work more than others. I don't have them all documented. I haven't tried all of these. But the ones I have tried and do work, and some of these are also internal, meaning, you're not meant to use them. They're ServiceNow built. Don't worry about it. It's all given to you automatically, right? The ones that do work are generate content. And this basically generates content such as knowledge articles or articles in general, right? Generic prompt, and we're going to use this later on. Generic prompt just basically means ask the LLM anything. So if you imagine like ChatGPT, we can ask it to, write a poem or give me a recipe. Basically, that's what generic prompt is. Ask it anything, give it anything, or answer anything. Sentiment analysis. You can use that one. You can input a paragraph or a sentence, and it will output sentiment analysis, negative if it's a negative sentiment, neutral or positive sentiment. And then summarize as well. Summarize, basically, you give it a big blob of text and it'll summarize it for you. Okay. Let's see if there's any more. Nope, that's it. Everything else is either your miles may vary or it's meant for ServiceNow internal consumption. But we're going to go over those four. Okay. So let's look at summarize. Let's look at sentiment analysis. That's the first one we're going to use. That's one of the first ones we're going to use in our virtual agent. So I click on some sentiment analysis. You may have to switch scopes to open it up a bit. Let's make sure this active flag is true, which it should be automatically, right? You'll see that there are some attributes here. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the Azure OpenAI API, these parameters will look familiar to you, right? Error code provider, response status, etc. Right? Again, this is all low code, so rather than reading the API documentation, these are here for you. But then what we want to go to is the definition configs related list. And you want to make sure that one of these definitions is defaulted to true. All of them are active to true, they should be. So, check that. But this determines which model the controller is going to use. And you see, we give you 6, right? OpenAI, Azure OpenAI, chat completion, GPT-4, just plain OpenAI completion. This one's GPT-3. And then what I have available, and I can open this up here just to show you more detail. Right, make sure this is true, make sure this default is true. Azure OpenAI chat completion. This is GPT 3.5. Okay. I recommend you use GPT 3.5 or GPT-4. They're faster, and I believe GPT 3.5 is cheaper, but it's ultimately up to you, right? This is what it's going to determine what model you use for your input output. Okay, so we make sure that's true. Now we got to connect your Azure OpenAI subscription to the instance. How do we do that? We go to the connections and credentials alias page. Now, for any of you who have connected with other APIs, this page is familiar to you. So I type in connections, there it is, connections and credentials, credential aliases. And yes, the first one, Azure OpenAI. Now I see I already got one here, but if I didn't have it, this is blank. You simply click create new connection credential. And remember, I showed you earlier the endpoint. You copy and paste your endpoint into here, right? And then you copy and paste your API key. You can click to copy the keyboard, and you paste it in here. You click create, and you're done. And then this record will appear for you. I can show you what this record looks like. There's a connection URL, and then the credential will be in this record. There's the API key, and you'll be done with that. Of course, if you were to use OpenAI, they also provide you an endpoint and an API key. Same process. I believe there is an out-of-box OpenAI record and credentials and alias. There it is. Same concept. Okay. So once you've connected that, you've activated at least one of the capabilities, right? Summarize. If I go to history, if I go back to, or not summarize, I'm sorry, I keep saying summarize, sentiment analysis. I also did it for a generic prompt, and because we're going to use that in a moment, and you'll be good to go. You'll be able to use it in any of the builders, right? Flow Designer, Virtual Agent, etc. Let's use it for Virtual Agent, because this is, after all, a Virtual Agent Academy. So I'm going to go to that other table. Remember the one I mentioned here, and this one here. So let's go to there. sys1 extend builder config. If you haven't memorized it, that's okay. I put it in my OneNote to, so I can copy and paste it later. And you'll see there are a bunch of builders here. The one we want to look at is Virtual Agent Designer. Okay, let's first make sure active is true, right? All these should be defaulted, but sometimes you never know, right? There should be async and active, and you'll see I put a bunch in here already. I'm going to delete this code as sys1. This one isn't relevant, but maybe I'll do it again just to show you what it looks like. But basically, this will be blank. You see, I've already included a couple in here, but I'm going to click on new, and I'm going to add one that's already been added, but I won't click submit. I'll just show you what you do. So you add capability, and I hope this pop-up window appears for you. I'm sharing desktop. Yeah, so it should. And which capability do you want to add to the virtual agent, right? We want to add sentiment analysis. So I scroll down there. There it is, sentiment analysis. I want to make sure execution mode is async, always async. And then if you wanted a different icon in the Virtual Agent Designer, you can click to add here. It'll bring up your file explorer. You can add an icon like, happy face because of sentiment analysis, or maybe you want the OpenAI logo, whatever, right? You can do that. You click submit, and it'll show up here, sentiment analysis. I did the same thing here for generic prompt. Default doesn't matter so much here, but you definitely want to make sure active is true for all of these, right? So I did the same thing for generic prompt. I'll just show you an example. There it is, generic prompt, async as always. Description if you want to, doesn't matter, and an icon if you wanted to add that as well. All right, so once you've done that, these two capabilities, these two generic, generic prompt sentiment analysis, these two generative AI capabilities are now available for you to use in Virtual Agent. Well, let's take a Virtual Agent Designer. Let's take a look at that. So let's go to Designer. And I see there are no questions, so that's great. This either means I'm doing a great job, or it means that I've completely overwhelmed you. But so if it's one or the other, give a shout out in the chat. If you have questions, feel free to start populating them in Q&A. We're at the home stretch of our exercise, so bear with me here. But here's where everything comes together. I want to create a new topic. Let's call it generative AI test. Call it a create. And you'll notice in the left-hand side, little components, if I scroll down, there they are, generic prompt and sentiment analysis. Okay, so let's do this, excuse me, let's do this case here. Let's ask the user how they're feeling in the virtual agent. We'll analyze the sentiment, and if it's positive or neutral, we'll say, yay. If it's negative, we'll ask them to expound. And how does that sound? Okay. And we'll have them expound to say, hey, how else can I help you? And we'll pass through a generic prompt there. Okay. So let's do that very quick. First, we're going to ask them how they're feeling. How are you feeling? And the prompt is, how are you feeling? Okay. And then we're going to drag in our sentiment analysis. It's a topic block, technically speaking, but you'll notice here your outputs. Remember those parameters in the capability, right? And there's your utterance. We're going to call this is the sentiment node. Utterance, what are we passing in as the input? We're going to pass in whatever they typed in here, right? So we're going to use our data pill input variables. How are you feeling? Okay. Now, what this returns is either literally the words negative, neutral, or positive. Okay. So let's add a decision tree, because we're going to do different things depending on whether, what our output, is, right? We'll have one for positive, neutral, and we'll have one for negative. Okay. Negative, that's if the response, okay, so status is usually just okay, right? So it's a 201, 301, something like that, right? But response is what you want, right? Provider it can tell you whether it's coming from OpenAI or Azure OpenAI. That's good, but we want response. If response is negative, we'll have it do something. And then if response is positive, or response is neutral, we'll have it do something else. So positive, neutral, we'll just say, okay, good to hear. Okay, that's great to hear. Talk to you soon. And we'll end the conversation there, right? But what if it's negative? What do we do, right? So let's ask them, what would you like? Sorry to hear. What would you like, right? What do you want? So, free to hear. How can I help you? All right, and a more work-related use case here is maybe for AI search or some search fallback. Let's say you search, your results don't turn up anything. Okay, now you want to search like the LLM. Now you want to do like a ChatGPT ask anything sort of deal, right? If the sentiment say is negative and like the search results do not help me, then you can do something like this, right? You can ask, okay, what do you want to know, right? And we'll drag in the generic prompt topic block. Remember, same thing. Got your parameters. You got your prompt, right? We'll call this, ask anything. And the prompt input will be, there it is. What do you want? And then we show the output. We're going to display the output of that ask anything. Okay, so we're going to call this is the generic output. And the response, and this is where it gets a little tricky because now you've got two topic blocks. You've got sentiment analysis, you've got generic prompt. So your input variables that you're going to see error 2, 1, 2, provider 1, 2, response 1, 2, right? So you want 2, obviously, because this is the second one you pulled in there, response. Or, this is what, and this what this will do, this will show you the output of the generic prompt. But let's do a little bit fancy. We want to make sure we want to cite a source, right? So we want to say that this is provided by space provider 2, all right? And then enter, and then your response. And what this is basically going to do, if I ask the generic prompt, like, write me a poem about flowers, it's going to say provided by Azure OpenAI, and then a poem about flowers, okay? So I think we've got everything here. Again, if you have any questions on what I did, feel free to put it in the Q&A. All right, we've published this. Now, usually you want to test it before you publish it, but we're kind of pressed for time, so let's just publish it. Test active topics. Hopefully, you guys, the pop-up shows up on a desktop. And we want the generative AI test. How are you feeling? Let's do, I feel great. Yay. And it'll tell me, good job, thank you. Or what was it? Great to hear. Yeah. Talk to you soon. And if you go to variables, you'll see that provider was Azure OpenAI and response was positive. That's good. Success status, of course, success. Oh, good. Doesn't just give you codes, it gives you words. That's good. Let's do the opposite. Let's do the other version, right? Show me everything. Generative AI test again. I feel bad not getting help. Boo-hoo. I'm really laying it on thick. Boo-hoo. And you'll notice, hopefully this gets refreshed. Yeah, response is negative. Now we're in the other branch. Sorry to hear. How can I help? So now I'm like, well, I like breakfast. I like scrambled eggs. How do I make scrambled eggs? This is basically, again, you can ask it anything, pass it any utterance, almost like ChatGPT, basically. And you'll see here your provider 2 is Azure OpenAI, and your response is how to make scrambled eggs provided by Azure OpenAI. Ingredients, Oh, wow, milk, cheese, that's really fancy scrambled eggs. And there you have it. How to make your users feel better. Of course, your users would probably want to search something more relevant to their work if their search results didn't help them in our work-related use case. But yeah, voila. So that's how you, and again, no scripting, no coding, no REST APIs or parameters or API docs. I basically, everything was given to you in the controller. You drag and drop, you turn on some default and active flags to true, and off you go. All right. Great. Now let's go back to the slides. We're going to cover some other things real quickly, and then we're going to do Q&A. So what's next for Now Assistant Virtual Agent, right? So what's coming in November, January, and even and then of course in March, which is our Washington release. So Now Assistant Virtual Agent just came out in Vancouver in September. You may have seen the press release for that, and that's essentially enhanced AI search in the virtual agent, right? So rather than getting a list of links in virtual agent, rather than get a genius result, you can get a generative, relevant context result in the virtual agent. Okay. In November, we're going to enable multi-turn with knowledge and service catalog. In other words, right, rather than just asking one question and getting one response, you can start conversing with that knowledge article, asking multiple questions, follow-up questions, right? Same thing with service catalog, right? We will be able to, ask, okay, naturally, what do you want? Get into the details of what you want, etc. We're going to improve the setup guidance, right? So we understand that this will entail some more configuration, et cetera. We don't like doing too much configuration. We're going to try to simplify that as much as possible. It's going to involve the conversational interfaces homepage, right? That the low-code page with all the configurations. We're going to make that easier to incorporate some Now Assist capabilities. We're going to incorporate virtual agent and AI search. So even yes, there's AI search in virtual agent, but for AI search in our portals, we're going to incorporate virtual agent. We're going to do the reverse, incorporate virtual agent topics into your AI search in portal, right? So if I ask a question and virtual agent may be able to help you better, we can surface those topics. And then finally, and this is perhaps the most general, but I'm going to just put it out there. We're going to shift from NLU to large language models. So NLU is not going to go away. And if you have NLU topics, that's good because we're going to provide some method for you to say, okay, you have NLU topics. How do we make them into LLM topics, right? So that's going to come a little later than the first 3 bullet points. But I wanted to raise that. Of course, safe harbor applies to forward-looking statements, but just some things to be aware of. All right. But wait, there's more. So today we talked about the controller with virtual agent. Tomorrow, I'm going to be guest starring in the AI Academy tomorrow morning Pacific, I believe the same time, maybe a little earlier. And I'm going to talk about the controller again, but I'm going to use a flow designer example. Okay, so if you're registered for the AI Academy, that's great. If not, definitely check it out. I think if you go to the community forum, go to our AI and intelligence forum, you can register for the AI Academy there. I believe the registration page, that one that has all the academies, AI academies in there too. So yeah, check it out. All right. By now, I'm sure you have questions. I'm going to try to go through them as quickly as possible. Apologies if we stay a little later. Just want to get through these questions. So let's jump right in. Yeah, Eric asks, will Gen AI replace NLU? It will maybe in the long term, right? But NLU will still be around. Customers still use NLU. People they like it, or they have the out of box models. We're not going to get rid of that immediately, but we're going to offer a way, like I mentioned, hey, if you're on NLU and you want to shift to LLM, we're going to give you a way to do that. So this is not a replacement. It's going to be it's going to be an option for customers to experiment. Maybe the LLM does some weird things to your out of box topics that you just want to keep NLU first, right? While you do some tuning or do some configuring. So it's not a replacement. It's just a shift. Marius asks, is it possible to activate AI search plugin for PDIs? I don't believe so because AI search does require a machine learning or an AI connection, and those don't do very well with PDI. So I'm going to lean towards a no on that. If there will be a shift to LLM, does that mean the customers will need to buy the AI controller eventually? Well, you see, that's a good point. If you don't buy the controller, if you don't buy a purchase now assist SKU, then you're going to stay on NLU, and that's a fine thing. So if you want to shift to LLMs, yes, it will involve the now assist SKU. If you don't, that's fine. You can keep using NLU. Again, it's not going anywhere. Are we ever going to be able to train an LLM on our internal knowledge base and have VA questions? Well, yes, not train an LLM, at least, let's do some difference there, but you will be able to fine tune your LLM with your knowledge base articles. And we actually do that now. So we actually use RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, today to augment your LLM to answer questions based on your knowledge base articles, and soon your service catalog as well. So train isn't the right word, more like augment. Okay. Will there be a capability that allows passing data to Azure and have the prompt ask OpenAI something about that specific data? Not an out-of-box capability. That does involve using external source, which isn't available today. So right now, your data source is just within the ServiceNow instance, and that was just to make things easier, reduce integration complexity, etc. We may enable external sources in the future. I don't have visibility into that roadmap item, but it's a good question. But right now, it's just for your ServiceNow information. Okay. Let me check the chat to make sure I'm good. Everything was good. Yeah, we mentioned that the SKUs there. I'm not sure. Travis asks, are there plans to integrate this into the ServiceNow platform proper rather than just a customer support portal? I'm not sure what we mean by that. But we actually do have, it's funny, we do use some generative AI tools in our support portal for our employees, but nothing that'd be customer facing. Just a little topic. Is there a way to Justina? I hope I pronounced that correctly. Is there a way to implement pasting images to the chat directly from the clipboard? I've heard that request before. Agents can do it into their chat, but users can't yet. I understand that's like a UI gap, but unfortunately not yet. And then last question, Tiago. Sorry if I missed the presentation. Is there any way to capture the confidence level of sentiment detected? Yeah, so it was in the response. So if you saw that variable previously, negative, neutral, positive, that's an variable which you can use to to whatever you want to do, whether some sort of logic or some workflow like I did. Positive, do one thing, negative, do another. So yes, that's there. All right. Oh, one more question, and then we'll call it a wrap. For the virtual agent, is there a special format needed for knowledge articles so that I can view the content? Well, if you want to display a knowledge article in the virtual agent, no, there's no special format needed. It can display anything, basically anything text and bullets. If you have images in there, I haven't seen that before, but I'm sure it works, or it works to some degree. But certainly text and bullets, that's fine. Okay, so that's all for questions. Again, thank you all for joining me. I will see you next time on the Virtual Agent or the Conversational Interfaces Academy, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye.